Hello and welcome to this episode of the Mama Podcast. This week we're joined by Sophie, known online as the Happy Midwife. Sophie is a practising midwife and mum and also works in perinatal governance, which means she sits right at the intersection of maternity and neonatal care, looking at safety, learning from incidents and how services actually improve in the real world. In this conversation we talk about what drives better care and what gets in the way. Sophie shares why transparency matters, why open door policies have to be more than just words, and how culture changes when staff feel listened to instead of managed from a distance. We also get into flexible working and retention, why Keep Asking Why is such a powerful tool, and what it looks like to challenge unsafe or outdated practice without being shut down. If you're a midwife, a student, a maternity leader, or a parent who wants to understand how change happens in the system, this episode's for you.
Well, welcome to this episode of the Mama Podcast. I am Heidi Eldridge, your host, and also the founder and CEO of Mama Academy. And we are here with Sophie. Would you like to tell everyone all about you, Sophie? Your lifestyle and the role that you're in at the moment and how you've gotten to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Heidi. Thank you so much for having me on. My name's Sophie. I am a midwife by background and still practicing today. Day to day, I've got a son. He's 19 months old, napping as we speak. So fingers crossed, we're good for that. And life is a juggle for sure. But I'm, loving life as a mum. But sort of backwards of my career where I am today, I'm in a relatively new role, recently started in November actually, in my recent post, which I'm really enjoying, and that's in a perinatal governance team. So perinatal, just for those who don't know, is maternity and neonatal all in one. So every service should now be perinatal instead of having two divides. And that's looking at governance assurance, bringing in Saving Babies' Lives, CNST, strategic elements, as well as the operational side of things, incident management, and trying to implement from learnings. I'm the lead for quality improvement in maternity as well, and neonatal. So there's a lot of programs of work to be done. There's a lot going on. And I'm really trying to get stuck into that. So I'm loving that. But my background, my passion is absolutely quality improvement. And I think my background sort of shines on that. So sort of taking it back to the beginning, did my preceptorship as all midwives have to do, did that in a North West London trust, still have a really good close affiliation with that trust, still work bank there fairly often, in all sort of areas, and love to do that so that I can maintain my credible status in all the leadership roles that I've done. So I did that, worked in Australia for a little bit doing the same sort of thing, came back and then was a ward manager on a postnatal ward. Got a little bit fed up of being told what to do on that postnatal ward without much rhyme or reason behind why. Every time I sort of challenged the leadership or the organisation to say, why am I asking this? What feels like a burden on my team when they're doing so much already? What's being removed in place of it? Nobody could really give me an answer. And that kind of sparked the sort of onset of my journey, I think, with quality improvement and wanting to know more about what's going on and why. So that sort of took me down a path working in integrated care boards, which were formerly CCGs, lots of different analogies, but working for an integrated care board with the local maternity and neonatal system as a project manager for maternity, sort of better births, as midwife you might be called in another trust, implementing all things to do with the Better Births Review that was way back when. That then very quickly and rapidly changed because Ockenden came along, COVID hit us. There was all sorts of snowballing. So actually what was once my job was no longer my job. It was just everything encompassing into that. But I absolutely loved that, and implemented so many good things and was able to actually grasp, okay, this is coming into a change and this is the reason why. And it meant actually I could still go into the trusts and say, yes, you need to do this, but this is your reason why. And people were more than happy to make those changes when they knew that there was a real rhyme and reason behind it. And it wasn't just another tick box answer, it was a meaningful change. So that was really great. I loved doing that. Did that for a while, did that, got a promotion as senior project manager. So then I was leading all of the other sort of project managers as well. And then I was really fortunate and I had an opportunity in NHS England, and I worked there as the National Quality Improvement Lead for maternity. And that was a real eye-opener. I absolutely loved that job. It was a fixed-term contract. Otherwise, I would 100% have stayed in it. and that was going into a lot of the trusts who were poorly rated, inadequate, or requires improvement from CQC, and actually some trusts who had thought they might be getting to that level and wanting to be proactive and trying to not get to it, so they would call us in to support them. So I went into a lot of trusts in England, did a lot of reviews and quality improvement, sort of all sorts of different improvement projects that helped with them, as well as assess their sort of evidence. It was very individual depending upon each trust's needs as to what my role and remit was with them. But I had such a great time. I absolutely loved doing that role. And then I was a head of midwifery at a trust, which, had its issues, but I felt I could be that change and that, the freshness and coming from that role in the NHSE, it was a really good sort of opportunity for them to demonstrate what, for me to demonstrate what I can be within an operational setting, as much as it's great being on the outside. I wanted to sort of bring my knowledge from the outside in and be part of that change. And then I had a baby, and the sort of the journey and all of it wasn't appropriate because it was a really big commute for me. So sort of left that organisation and went back into community midwifery for a little bit, just while I found my feet and worked out what I wanted to do. And then started my current job that I'm doing now. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind, but I'm really grateful for all of the opportunities I've had, because it's given me this really broad portfolio. And it's not your sort of traditional route, which, whilst I do think that's great for some people, I've got ADHD, so I was never going to follow that route anyway. But I think I'm able to offer things a lot of others wouldn't be able to do if they'd followed that traditional route. So that's my sort of nutshell.
Wow, that sounds incredible. That's a lot. You've got a lot of experience under your belt, and I can really hear your passion about,
Yeah,
quality improvements and wanting to make a difference and make change. So that's absolutely amazing.
thank you.
So what made you want to come on to our Mama podcast today?
So, I mean, I'm a very big fan. I'm a podcast fanatic, regardless. I just love podcasts, and I do have a channel of social media that I like to talk through educational purposes and share my life a little bit. And from maternity being in the limelight so much, getting all that negativity, I just like to be a little bit of a positive, thread through it. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's nothing wrong, because there's 100% things wrong, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But I just wanted to come on here to give my stance on what I believe change should be and how that can happen, mainly about sort of like leadership and the transparency that comes with that in this new modern day of working. There's so much to it that's actually really easy to fix, that people just for some reason aren't doing. And I think with the portfolio we've talked about that I've been able to see what real difference being like practicing in this way can have. So yeah, I was part of my quality improvement arm. Leadership's also come into play with that massively, and I myself have been on a journey. I think you've got to learn, and you consistently develop yourself. But I just wanted to come on here to sort of shout from the rooftops about what I believe is the right thing to be doing, and things that might potentially need to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think leadership and transparency really needs to be talked about so much more, about what can be done, and
Yeah,
inspiring others to lead the
yeah,
way and make change.
yeah, for sure. I just think for me that it comes arm in arm. I think anybody can be a good leader. Not everybody's a good manager, and they kind of get put together at one point. You don't have to be in a management position to be a good leader, and I think that's what I really want to make clear. You don't have to wait to be given that title to assume that role. You either have it or you don't, and you kind of that's my personal opinion. I've done a lot of work on it, and yes, you develop, but I think you kind of are either you're a good leader or you're not really a good leader. Um, but I just think transparency. If you are transparent as a leader, you are a good leader. You can't be a good leader if you're not transparent with the people you're leading. And the NHS as a whole is full of what people think are secrets and cover-ups, and it's just so unnecessary. So just using my own personal experience, trying to remove anybody else from this, the amount of organizations I've been in or worked in where things are happening behind the scenes, the staff, myself, I'm completely clueless to it. Although I'm not clueless, they think we're clueless. And instead of saying, yes, we've got this problem, yes, I don't know, for example, yes, we've been rated poorly, you all know that, that's out there for the public to see. And rather than saying we acknowledge we've been rated poorly and we understand that this is our reason behind it and this is what we're going to do about it, what do you all think we should be doing about it, and bringing us in on that journey. And yes, we are being onboarded to the NHS England programme for improvement. That's a really positive thing. It was all just hush, 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 hush. Nobody knows about it. And you're like, why? And actually all these things just suddenly happen. And there's no explanation. And it's for no good reason. Like, there are, of course, certain things which you're not going to shout from the rooftops about. And I led an organisation, I 100% understand that. But if you want change to happen, and from a cultural perspective, you hear that word so often, it's such a buzzword. But how do you actually change culture palpably? You've got to, first of all, communicate with the people that you want that culture to change, because that is inherently causing your negative culture when you're not talking to them and you're not being honest. Yes, there's this problem, we acknowledge, you're not, yes, this is happening, or we're not sure what to do about this, actually, and that's the honest truth about it. Much rather be told that than feel like we're not being involved, or that, we're being lied to, essentially, or always on the back foot. And I just think you can be transparent in so many ways, and bring people into the picture. And that's what I found in my, especially throughout my quality improvement sort of work and my project management roles. The more I spoke about things with people, it was so much easier. Everybody wanted to make the change. They were empowered and they were part of it, and they felt involved, and they wanted to take the reins, and I was able to, coach them and facilitate them to do that, instead of being the bearer of bad news, and that, oh, you've got a full ward and you've got to now do all these extra things to do that. Nobody had that attitude. And that was just because I simply communicated. You look at incidents, and in my job now, that's part of my role. The crux of 99.9% of all incidents is communication in some way or another. They either didn't escalate, that there was a lacking of communication between individuals, there was a lacking of communication between departments, senior leadership haven't communicated a change. Like, there's always something, and I would die on the hill that communication is the crux of almost every issue you have.
So that's a really good place to start. It's about the culture, being transparent, and it's about exactly what you've just said. And I think you're right. If you're not honest and transparent and don't bring out the elephant in the room, that's all people are going to be focused on, isn't it?
And that we're
not
stupid. It's not that, like, we don't assume that these things are happening. We all do. You do all still know. So it's 10 times worse, because you're not, just like you say, addressing that elephant in the room and going, yep, actually what you're saying is correct.
Bring everybody on board with you, because then that creates sort of hope, excitement. People feel listened to. They get the opportunity to share their ideas, their voices, and that creates a more positive culture than if everyone's like, what is going on, this is ridiculous, things have got to change, and then that's a negative culture. So that is so true. So what have you seen in the past that's worked really well, and why do you think it's worked really well?
In terms of, like, leadership, or in terms of culture, or like as a whole sort of thing?
As a whole, everything really.
I'm again
thinking, let's inspire others.
So again, what I've seen is the flattened hierarchy essentially is something, again, I'll die on the hill of, because yes, you have to have structures, you have to have reporting mechanisms, and absolutely you shouldn't be pulling a band 9 into a clinical practice before you've got band 7s and all of that. I 100% from that perspective get that. But that doesn't mean that you can't go above someone's pay grade and speak to the person above them when you've got a problem. Like, I just think people act a little bit, some people they say they flatten the hierarchy, and they don't. Some people say that they don't have this hierarchy. Where I work now, I'm very fortunate, and my senior leadership team, to be fair, like, I can have a really good laugh with anybody and everybody, and there's no like pressure or, oh God, did I say the wrong thing because they're a little bit above me? Nobody has that attitude, and it's so refreshing. But when you do have that attitude, or you do have that fear mongering, essentially, of, well, have you spoken to them about this? And this isn't just midwifery. This is going into, so I'm just going to keep this maternity neonatal specific, but I am 100% sure that it's relatable in other areas. But looking at that doctor midwife divide, or you've got this process, and a classic example is in a practice example is when you've got a woman who needs to be cannulated, the midwife's given it a go and they've said, actually, I've tried twice, her veins are really not great, she's dry, she's told me that she's not good easily to cannulate. Midwives are generally pretty good at getting an IV in. And instead of so as a midwife, if that's me, I would go to the anaesthetist and say, this is what's happened, please can you come and put the cannula in. Quite often you will have it where the anaesthetists will say, well, have you not called the SHO? That's the junior doctor. And often a lot less, well, they are less qualified than midwives who have worked for years and years and years doing this. Quite often they've never put cannulas in, or it's their first rotation. And I'm like, no, I haven't, because I'm not going to, because they're less like, that's not the point. I'm not putting this woman through rounds and rounds of pain before you can finally come and see her, when you could quite literally do what we need to do right now. And they sort of get a bit shocked by that, and it is getting better, I will admit, but there is still that issue, because then it'll go, oh well, the SHO couldn't do it, or have you spoke to the obstetric reg? Like, what's an obstetrician? Why should we have to go through that before you, which is your specific specialty? You can easily do this, just come and do it. Like, it's a woman at the end of the day that's suffering, not us. So you'd rather we punctured her 5-6 times and then you come in and get it first time, when you could have done that all along. That's, again, and that's a fear-mongering culture, because you get all these brand new CEPT midwives, junior midwives, international midwives, where they're essentially terrified to question the hierarchy, and that shouldn't even be there. They've hit then you get this culture of, oh no, I can't do that, and they don't speak up when they need to speak up, and it's just a constant snowball effect. That's like a practice thing, and like I say, it's got a lot better. It has got better, and it is getting better, but you still get those individuals, certainly from a medical perspective, who will only be addressed by their surname, will only be addressed by, if you've spoken to their SHO and their registrar before you come to them with something. And it's like, I just don't have time for that anymore, and I won't entertain it. But I'm very lucky and fortunate that doing the jobs I've done, I have a backbone, I'm very credible, and I do kind of back myself in that. But that wasn't easy to do, and that isn't because I'm so confident and whatever else. It's just through essentially over the years and the experience and learning and understanding that everybody is human. It doesn't matter what pay grade you are. We can all have a conversation, no matter where you sit in the hierarchy, that's not supposed to be there.
So how would you change that? How would you get that changed? Because if you were a midwife, for instance, and you came across that problem, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to happen again, or other midwives are going to come across this, how can I make a change in this trust so that the registrars understand the process and that actually they need to help with this?
So again, communication for one, and it's about that onboarding from, as much as I don't like the whole saying of top down, it is a top down situation, because it's more often those at the top that are causing those issues. So it's about the senior team all being open, from no matter what background they're in, whether they're obstetric or maternity, neonatal, them all understanding and going, yep, okay, we hear that this culture is a problem, this is the feedback, we understand that this is a problem, and just accepting that the world has changed. We are in a different modern day of working, and that the culture we have can 100% could have been prevented. And I think it takes, unfortunately, people challenging and having those awkward, conflicting conversations. Professional curiosity shouldn't be an argument. There shouldn't be shouting. It should, if you have a professional curiosity conversation, well, there's never an argument. There's a to and a fro, there's a debate, and that's fine, that's healthy. But it's about opening that conversation on a wider basis and empowering the staff. So for me, I will always empower or do my best to empower junior members of all staff, but specifically I've got a soft spot with the junior members of staff, because I've been in their shoes before. And you can see the look of terror in their faces, and often, like, these girls have trained during COVID as well, so they've had all of that going on. Their mental state's nowhere near what as resilient as back in the day we used to be, as such. Or people are talking about their mental health now, and they shouldn't be ashamed of that. So I'm very much like, I'm on the shop floor, I'm very integrated as an individual, and I will always back people whenever there's an issue. And my biggest thing is around, as much as I hate to be the person that says, if it's not written down, it didn't happen, It's true. It's certainly in the NHS. If I don't have that evidence where I can collate and say, look, from all of these incident reports, this individual or these people in particular are not, again, for the cannula, for example, that should be incident reported so that we can pick that up at senior level and go, why is this happening? What's your child like? Why are you doing that? And it needs to be appropriately managed. And that's the issue at the moment. There is no accountability, I don't believe, in the NHS. People kind of get away with what they want to, and it's been so long and so historically ingrained that when you get the likes of new people who are fresh-faced and want to kind of face that challenge, they are seen as the bad people because they want to approach that. They want to make a change. And then you get another issue where you've got to essentially get over that, or build those relationships and really trying to break down those barriers to get the staff to understand and believe you that what you're saying is correct and what you're saying is for the good, and that change isn't a bad thing. But when you have a specific group of people, it only takes one person to cause a bad culture. And I think that's what people don't quite understand. But it is fixable, and it's not a one overnight. It's not one person that's responsible. We are all responsible in our own right, but we should all be able to speak our minds in a professional way. And currently we can't do that, or people aren't empowered to do that. They don't feel able to do that at varying levels. Even at senior levels, you get squashed from a lot of people. And if you don't feel comfortable, or you don't, have that coaching or that background in the ability of learning how to appropriately challenge someone, it's easy to just sit there and go, okay, well, fine, instead of trying to address that issue.
It's so hard, because you're right. You've got to be resilient. You've got to be persistent and determined, and not take no for an answer, really. My tip is always to keep asking why.
Yeah, no,
But why?
100%. I'm so glad you said that. So one of the questions I know that I wanted to talk to you about is what actually is currently not working in terms of the leadership element, or what needs to happen, what needs to change. And one of those things is, all taking it back to the question of why, is people not honouring the fact that like flexible working is a thing nowadays, right? And there are jobs that you shouldn't work from home in, i.e. if you're operational and you're running a service, it's difficult to work from home and do that. Not impossible, and there are ways to do it. But like my job, again, use myself as an example, I'm in a strategic position. I don't need to be present, and actually all the time anyway. And so I work from home once a week, and I condense my days because I have a son. However, I am more visible in the 3 days that I am present than a lot of other individuals who turn up to work every single day. You can't sit here and tell me that visibility is turning up to work. That's not visibility. Visibility is actually getting out your office, going into labour ward, seeing everybody on the shop floor, going to the wards, everywhere else, and actually having your face known. So you can turn up 5 days a week, but if you're not seen and you close your door, what's the point? That's
And
sort
you
of
need
that
to be
side.
approachable.
Yeah, and exactly. And my biggest bugbear as well is saying you have an open door policy, but your door is always physically closed. So like the other day, my door was open because nobody in my office, I share an office with, there's 4 of us. And I was in on my own, and the bleep holder came to see me, and she was like, oh, why is your door open? She's like, you're going to get bothered all the time. And I was like, I don't mind that. Like, I want people to understand that I actually mean it. That's the whole point. And even when I was a head of midwifery, my door, I shared with a consultant midwife, and she used to close it, and I'd go out and I'd open it every time. And she'd be like, why are you opening the door? And I'd be like, because we should be approachable. This is the point. And over time, she learned that. But going back to the why element, with the flexible working, I was told, not just in this organisation, in like loads of organisations, when I've sort of challenged people's, your retention strategy, why are people leaving, what's going on? And when I've actually spoken to the staff, more often than not, it's because they won't accommodate their needs. And more often than not, they're not impossible demands. They're not asking to never work a Christmas. They're not asking to never, to only work in term time, which is still a thing actually. But, people more often than not, it's like, oh, I wanted to work from home, or they wouldn't accommodate a 9-day fortnight, like something really somewhat minor in the grand scheme of things. But I'd say, okay, have you asked why? And they'd be like, oh, they just said they couldn't do it. And I'm like, yeah, why? And no one's asking why. Or they go, oh, okay. And why is that then? And then they go, well, it's just not going to work for the service. Oh, okay. That's not an acceptable answer. If you can't actually, why is it not going to work for the service? And what you actually get down to the bottom of is people still stuck in the old ages of, you must turn up to work every single day, you must work full time, you must work every single weekend, you must work this. Like, there's no acceptance that we're in this new modern day of working. You know, when I qualified, wasn't in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long ago. I qualified in 2016, and it wasn't even a thing to me that I would even think of not working full time. But in the last 9 years, which again, not a long time, majority, I signed so many like midwives qualifying who don't want a full-time contract, or they want to work bank after and only have a part-time contract and just work 0 hours after that. And I'm like, wow, okay. Like, and I did sort of think, well, oh, I mean, fair play if you can even afford to do that. But their quality of life is just so much more valued, and they don't think that what they know, they work to live, they don't live to work. And I think in that small period of time, that's a massive change. And people are still stuck in 15, 20 years ago mentality of, no, you must turn up to work every single time. You don't question your rota, you do as you're told, you serve, and that's it. You don't challenge you don't challenge the hierarchy, essentially. You do as you're told, you're done too. And that's just not okay. And you look at the interim report of, the national inquiry, and that's one of the issues in there. And not that flexible working, but the whole being done to and everything like that. That's not a new thing. We knew about this from Morecambe Bay. We knew about this way before I even qualified, and it's still happening. And it's
So there
an easy
seems to
thing to
be
fix.
like one person gets to make these decisions rather than
Essentially,
there be a team. And then how do you challenge that one person that has that position and that power? I've just led a campaign with NHS England who have a particular growth chart, an intergrowth chart, taken off the table because we found lots and lots of evidence, the fact that it's missing half of small babies and putting babies at risk.
oh,
And
okay,
it
yeah, I
has
saw this actually.
taken.
I got an email about it.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Because the
we don't
alert
use
came
that growth chart, so it's all good.
out. Good. The alert came out yesterday,
Yeah,
but that has been complaining for months and months and months of hard work, and there's a leader at the top making these decisions, and it's like, well, where's the accountability? Where's the team effort into this? Where's the analytics of people looking at this and analyzing the evidence?
yeah,
And at first the attitude was, well, this hasn't been done before.
right.
And I'm like, well, great, this is your time to shine then, because it's unprecedented, but you can issue an alert, you can change the guidance. And if ever there was a time to do it, it's now, because all of the, I mean, we're talking thousands of babies being put at risk because, of undetected growth restriction. And it takes a while to change that mindset and that attitude, and you keep presenting the evidence, and
Yeah,
you have to have the resilience and the persistence. But we've got
yeah,
there,
you've done
and
it.
now the alerts come out. But how do you find that determination? And when there is one person making that decision, how can you go higher, if you like, or how can you rally around and get some allies so you don't feel so alone and
Yeah,
isolated? And because you've got the evidence to say this is a really positive change and will make a
yeah,
difference.
yeah. So you've kind of answered it yourself in the fact that as long as you stay true to the fact that you remove emotion out of it, you remove anything judgmental, you stick with the facts and everything. And if there is an injustice, I went through so much hell and high water in uni that I think it's actually given me this, like, I don't know, I will, yeah, essentially, yeah, like I'm a dog with a bone if there is something to be fixed. And if you can present me with evidence, you can't argue. I'm not like, I will take that evidence and I will run with it, because you can't argue with the facts, and if you're going to try and argue with the facts, then you shouldn't be in that position, and that's the bottom line. So I think, and it is really difficult to be that individual in an organization where you've got such systemic issues when you know, and it is this, often it's this one person, but actually sometimes it's not. It's a group of people who are making these decisions, who more often than not haven't worked on the shop floor in the last 10-20 years, have no idea what it is they're actually talking about. They think they're making the right decisions, but off their own back. There is, when you can, but they're not, because they are all one and alike, they don't get that challenge that they need, and they're only employing people into their team that are arguably going to be the puppet and the puppeteer in that situation, because they're not going to get that challenge. And so I think if you do feel like you have the answer to something, that you think something is wrong, never ever ever question whether or not you are wrong to challenge it, because you are never wrong. So what if you are wrong? So what if you're wrong? At least you can say that you tried. And if you are challenged and the argument back is actually, no, your evidence not quite right, but this is the evidence, and you can go, oh, okay, fine. But 99% of the time, if you have evidence that something is wrong in these situations, you are right. And if you want to go with, if you feel that there is that need to go, there are people you can talk to. There are individuals, like I say, I've had people reach out to me from all over, and I've helped people in situations. But you are so within your own rights to follow your gut on these, and like gut instinct is massive. So if you feel that there is something wrong and you can provide the evidence to say this isn't happening, or even if it's anecdotal, if they can't provide you the evidence to say it's not happening, there is an argument to be had, and there is a challenge to be made. And if you're not getting the answers from them, there are always people above them who will listen, and there are always external routes you can take, and it should never get to that. It really shouldn't. And I'm not saying that that's the easiest way out, because it's not. It's awful having to be that person, and you are made to feel like the outcast. But if you can slowly but surely infiltrate people in a way that is positive and encourage them and empower them with your evidence and say, have you ever thought about this? Or actually, you keep coming to me with this issue. What do you think is the solution? And slowly but surely you're building that team, them allies. As a force, you cannot be ignored. And over time, you will realize that your concern is also this person's concern and this person's concern. And then they start talking, and then they get bigger, and it gets bigger, and it gets bigger, and you cannot ignore that. And I just think, unfortunately, we are in that time where people haven't been empowered to make that challenge. Whereas I think we are getting better, because we are getting people in post who are like I'm employed in this new role, and I've already challenged a lot of people, and I'm really happy, because the team I'm in are fantastic, and they're like welcoming, and they want that challenge to be made to the others. But the people I'm challenging are not happy, because they've never been challenged before. But I have the evidence to say, what you're doing is fundamentally not the right thing, and this needs to change, and this is the harm, and this is this, and this is that. Have you thought about this? And instead of just going, well, I think this is wrong, and walking away from it, I'm chasing it, and I'm persisting, and I'm saying, okay, and a bit like going back to that why question, just constantly ask why. If they can't give you a genuine reason other than it's not what I want to do, there isn't an actual reason that makes sense, that's safe, that sits well with you, then you don't have to accept that. And if people want to make you feel like absolute pieces of what for that, then that's on them. You should never ever be made to feel like a horrible person because you've challenged something. Because actually, if we don't challenge, the status quo never changes, and the culture becomes even worse. Incidents keep happening. There is a harm. We lose our staff. Retention is awful, and we just get more and more reports with the same thing. And so I think it's about taking the opportunity. So like for myself as a leader, I'm always looking out for little golden nuggets, little stars, people that are shining, who I know can see what I'm saying. And the minute I have someone that comes to me and says, and they'll have a complaint about something or someone, I allow them that time to vent, and I'm like, brilliant, cool. And then by the end of it, I say to them, right, what do you actually think we could do about this? Or what would you like to see happening here? And you kind of plant that seed that they are empowered to also make a change. They don't need to just leave it with someone else. I will absolutely fight the fight, and I will be there for you. But if we do it together, we are both as strong. And if you can't argue with more, the more people you have, the harder it is to argue with and ignore that and shush down, essentially. So I think it's a slow process, but the more you can gain that momentum and just consistently keep it going, you will see palpable change. And it can be a small thing, it can be a big thing, but the methodology is still the same. You have to be consistent. You have to go with your values. You have to show up. You have to, don't question the fact that if you have something that just does not sit right with you, you are completely validated to have concerns and to express them.
We need you on the leadership team of every trust, Sophie. How do we clone you? We've heard such awful horror stories lately of where people have felt, midwives have felt as if they're whistleblowing.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a real blame culture, and they've wanted to raise a safety alert. And they've tried to raise a safety alert, and they've literally just been, you know, closed down. Their concerns have been dismissed because they just want to sweep things under the carpet, as if to say, oh, there's no problem here, everything's fine, everything, you know. And actually there's a huge issue, and sadly, you know, outcomes are really, really poor as a result of it.
Yeah.
But how can we give people hope that change is on its way? Because I do believe the more we talk about this and the more it's
Absolutely.
recognised, it has to change. People have to change their attitude.
Yeah, I agree. I think, as I said a minute ago, that nothing is going to happen overnight, but I think it's about sorry, fighting that fight. That as soon as you think there is something wrong, don't ever feel disempowered, and don't stop if you reach a block. Look and explore another avenue. There is always someone out there that will hold your hand and will help you with it. And I think what I want to get across is I have seen really fantastic change, and I have seen real good examples of leaders. You know, like I say, the organisation I'm in at the moment has got a really fantastic leadership team who, you know, sort of chief exec downwards, who really listen and they take on board. And we've got a non-executive director who used to be a midwife who's so engaged, you know. And it's things like that when you don't feel dismissed, and you've got a dom who turns up to the board and goes, yeah, I know I'm in the ears, and I know that she's being asked for questions, she's not just speaking at them, you know. And that's a massive change. It was barely ever, the director of midwifery barely ever went to board in comparison to what they do now, because there was no point. Whereas now people are asking these questions, and rightfully bloody so, and they are investing and they are trying, but there is so much more work to be done. So as much as I can't say, yeah, it's going to be great, because it's not going to be great. It's going to take a long frigging time to fix whatever the hell it is that's gone on. And if I had it my way, you know, I would start again, completely wipe everybody out of their positions and rewrite what it looked like from a structural perspective. Because I think, yes, having experience is a necessity to do a job well, but experience isn't equivalent of how long you've been qualified. The two aren't the same thing, because I've got people stuck in position, not stuck, but sat in positions, sitting pretty in a position of leadership that they've been in, you know, 20, 30 years. And I'm like, when did you last actually do anything credible? Like, I can tell you, I delivered a baby in 2 weeks ago, and I'm a leader, and I have no issue in running that labour ward if you need me, and I have no issue in going to a home birth and all the rest of it. I challenge a lot of others out there to find a leader in their organisation who's equally as comfortable to go and do those things without, you know, basically being a bit scared, because that should never happen in any situation. And you shouldn't have chief executives who don't know what it is and how it feels to sit on a ward setting, in a labour ward, in an A&E. Like, there should be that compassion and that desire to want to improve, instead of cut the budgets and I'll get a bonus, because that's essentially what's happening. So I think we just need to rejig it and look at who sits in these positions and actually what they bring in. And that's the other thing, is people are not held to account for not doing their job well. And people aren't even aware. Half the people you speak to and you go, well, why aren't you doing this? And they're like, well, that's not my job. And you're like, hang on, it literally is. And when you show them their job description, they're like, oh, right, well, you know, no one's ever told me that. And you're like, how? Like, how have you gotten away with this for so long? You know. And so I think there are people, I'm not the only person here that's fighting the fight. There are a lot of us out there now, and anybody listening to this who feels that they have this issue and they're not sure, speak up. You're not alone. And if you feel like you're made to feel horrible, there are always people that you can speak with and escalate things to. But you should never be questioned on why you're challenging someone. You should never be sort of squished or made to feel wrong for doing it. And if you are, that is on them. That is essentially their issue.
Definitely. And I know you touched upon staff retention
Yeah.
briefly earlier. What message have you got for leaders in, trying to keep as much amazing staff as they can?
Yeah. My biggest message is to listen to your staff and not assume that you know what's best for them. Because like I said, we talked about flexible working. That is fundamentally one of the biggest things and the reasons why people are leaving. Work-life balance, not getting enough progression or development opportunities. The minute you do something for them, they will do something for you. So I had it in my team when I was the head of midwifery, where I had a team of 5 matrons who all wanted flexible working. They were fundamentally told, absolutely not, you have to work Monday to Friday, apart from one matron who worked long days due to other reasons that I won't go into. And I sat down with them and I was like, what is it you actually all want to do? And I just let them all talk to me. And I was like, look, I'm on board. We can make this happen. There are 5 of you. As long as the fundamental issue is the service cannot suffer because you're not because of you guys not being here.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as there is not a time you are all not off, there is always at least 2 of you present, and you communicate with each other. You don't just say this is my day off without planning and looking ahead at who's on leave, what's going on, who's there and who's there. And you are aware that if you are away, that doesn't mean that you are like that's always going to be given to you, because actually it has to change at times and we can consistently have to review it. And similarly, and it worked really well. And then similarly, when it comes to you've got band 7s and 6s, 5s, whoever wanting to do these sort of different patterns of work, if you've got people that want to work but you're not allowing them to do it, so they just stay on as a 0 hours contract, they're essentially doing what they want to do anyway. So why are you not going to facilitate that so that they can get annual leave, so they can have sick pay, they can have maternity leave and work the hours they want to work? Don't get me wrong, there are times when you're going to be like, okay, it's a little bit inequitable, but if you can have those conversations and express to them why it's inequitable, but actually could we do something else, instead of just outright refusing it, you're going to retain more staff and you're going to bring more people in, because they're going to go, oh, have you heard about such and such? They're actually listening to their staff and they're feeling validated, and they're going to want to give you more and be part of that change. Excuse me. And it's things like, in my own team, for example, there are members of staff who, again, told they couldn't work from home. I've sort of said we can, and honoured their flexible working in a way, but we've had really, really clear, concise conversations of, just because you are work from home doesn't mean that you are no longer available for escalation. If I need you, you come in. That doesn't mean that you're removed from it. And it's the same for me. If I'm called in, I go in. And that's about it. If it turns out you're not doing those things, then we have a further conversation and we revert to what we used to do. That everyone is happy, everybody is willing. When you give a little, you get a lot back. Everyone is happy, morale is higher, people want to stay, and you explore these possibilities of what you can do. And if you can't offer them what they want, there's always something you can do. I think people we're so quick to say no, but it's that why question again of, why am I actually saying no here? What am I actually doing here? And when you get people kicking off because, oh, well, she doesn't work this and she doesn't work that. If you're transparent with people from the beginning and you communicate effectively, you won't have those arguments, because actually they'll understand that if we didn't honour that contract, she'd be working bank doing the exact same shifts, and you'd be thinking, oh, she's amazing because she covers all these shifts for us all the time. So actually, have a conversation, value your staff, and you will get so much back.
Absolutely, I love that. And just thinking about the maternity inquiry that's underway at the moment, we've literally just had the first initial interim report from Baroness Amos. What are your thoughts about that?
To be honest with you, I skimmed through it. I read the summary as well, and I just thought, this is nothing new. And it kind of angered me a little bit. Not that she hasn't done a good job, she's clearly extrapolated things and everything else, but I think what upset me about it is that so far nothing new's come to fruition, to come of it. In the background, we've got cuts being made left, right, and centre, which actually, if you want to actually address half the problems in this report, you can't be doing what you're doing. So it's talk the talk, not walk the walk from the government's perspective. But equally, they are putting in millions and millions of pounds into this review, which is inherently going to take so much longer than they envisaged, because who in their right mind's writing any form of decent report in 6 months? And it's going to, more and more people are coming forwards. That money we're not learning anything different. We've known about it since Morecambe Bay, since Better, but all of these other reports have said the same thing. So why don't we take the money out of saying we're going to do this report and put it into finding a solution? Because it's all very well, but all you're now doing is publishing a report with yet another action plan, which is going to sit on my desk, and I'm going to have to look at, okay, I've got to I need to tick these boxes without making it a meaningless experience. I need to really make it meaningfully ticking these boxes. But then that distracts me from the ability to address the cause of a lot of other problems we're having. Whereas if you just compiled all these problems, which the last report was supposed to be doing, and actually said, okay, and brought people in who are more relevant to the situation, i.e. those actually currently working, and said, how do we fix this problem? And like I said, have leaders with credibility. You will get somewhere. Pay people appropriately, put people in jobs who deserve to be in jobs, remove that stigma around just because you've been qualified for 5 years, you don't deserve to be in this position. You will get somewhere. Listen to people, not based upon their banding, but based upon what they bring to the table.
Yeah, more honesty, more accountability, and more funding.
Yeah, and it's sad, like, you know, and I appreciate, especially, gosh, people that have been through these awful times, that I'm not trying to diminish or to take away from what they've gone through. And if they've come forwards when they've not before, that, you know, that's a brilliant opportunity. But the crux of this is we know the problems and we're not being given the resources to fix them.
Absolutely. So what is your take-home message to end with then? Anyone working in the maternity setting that's listening to this today, what do you want to say to them?
There's a couple of things. I think the biggest thing is, if you think there's a problem, act on it. Don't think, because actually if you don't act on it, you're part of the problem. And that is a big thing. You are entitled, you are validated to feel feelings. And if you think there is something wrong, speak to someone, ask, you know, even speak to your friend about it and see, what do you think about, you know, start the conversation, no matter where you sit, you know, in this supposed hierarchy that doesn't exist, which definitely does exist. You are entitled to question and challenge. And the other part of it is, go for the job. Don't be afraid. If you think there's something you can do, don't look at it and think, I've not been qualified. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not good enough to go for something. Don't let anybody make you think that, oh, because I haven't had this experience, or that person's better for me. That's not true. If you think you're capable, you're capable. And a job description, is there, and, you know, the essential criteria is there. But if you haven't got every single thing on it, that is okay. Not many people do. So if you think you can do something and do it well, go for it.
I love that. That's so encouraging. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today, Sophie.
Thank you for having me.
It's really inspiring. And I'm sure so many people will want to continue hearing what you have to say, because you are active on social media. So what's your handle? How can people find you?
So I'm mainly active on TikTok, and that's at the Happy Midwife. I do have an Instagram because I kept getting asked. So and that's at the Happy Midwife IG. But predominantly everything sort of happens over on TikTok. So yeah, more than welcome, more the merrier.
TikTok, fantastic. We will be joining you on there. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Keep shining, keep being brilliant.
Thank you so much. Take care.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, share it with a friend or colleague. Make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on our next episode. If you'd like to support our work by fundraising or volunteering, please email contact@mamaacademy.org.uk. For more information on pregnancy and maternity services, please visit our website at www.mamaacademy.org.uk. We're also on all of your favourite social media channels. See you next time!